very smart. He should do that. I said, that's good inside football right there, man. You could hear me about ball.
Of course, my boys, they've got 3 wins and 2 overtime games, man. I'm telling you, man. Raiders look really good.
Derek Clark playing out of the
Coming around the season, beating Steelers and beating the Raiders.
All right, call to order the meeting of Mayor and Council. Thank you all for being here. If you'll rise for the invocation by Councilman Holland.
Let us pray. Our Father God, we stand before you on this night that you have made. We pray to ask for your presence and your guidance to answer the questions that are presented before us for the citizens of Seaford. We pray, our Father God, to lay the problem, worries, and burdens in your hands, for the battle is not ours, it is yours. We pray you make it a blessed and safe and healthy meeting. We pray this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Please remain standing for the pledge. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
You may be seated. Okay, we're going to pull the executive session tonight. We don't have an update there. Are there any changes to tonight's agenda?
No, sir, there are not.
Okay, you've all received our minutes from our last meeting on September 14th. There are no questions or comments. I'll accept the motion to receive the minutes.
Mr. Mayor, I'll make that motion.
Okay, we have a motion from Councilman Holland. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
We have a second from Councilman Santos. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay, it's unanimous. Okay, do we have any correspondence?
No, sir, we do not.
Okay, we have a public hearing tonight at 7:05, but to be efficient with our time, we're going to jump down to new business number 5, which is the bids on street paving.
Thank you, Mayor. So in your package, you have a memo from the Director of Public Works, Burley Mears, and the city received 4 bids for this year's street paving. ECM Corporation was the low bidder at $102,105. The 2 streets that are being paved, we have some exhibits. Poplar Street from Pine Street to Arch Street will be done this year to include the handicap ramps at each intersection. And then Market Street will be paved, the remaining piece of Market Street from Dine Highway to Poplar Street. Those are the 2 bids we have worked, or 2 streets to be paved in the bid. We have worked with ECM Corporation several times over the past few years, and the Director of Public Works is recommending council accept their bid.
City Manager, do we have an idea of the time frame of this?
We do not. We'll have, once we award the bid and get them the purchase order, we'll have to coordinate with them. But it'll be reasonably soon. The weather's starting to turn on us.
Okay, are there any questions from council? If not, I'll accept the motion.
All right, Mr. Mayor, Councilman King, I will make a motion to accept the bid from ECM Corporation for street paving in the amount of $102,105 as presented.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
I will second that motion.
Councilman McCoy seconds. Are there any questions on the motion? If not, we'll do a roll call vote. Councilman King?
Aye.
Councilman McCoy?
Aye.
Councilman Holland?
Aye.
Councilman Henderson?
Aye.
Councilman Santos?
Aye.
Okay, it's unanimous. Thank you. It's 7:03. Do you have anything in there else you can?
Oh, the only other thing, if you don't mind, we'll do reminder of meetings. We only have one reminder for this meeting. It's the Sussex County Association of Towns, SCAT. Their dinner meeting, October 6, 2021, starts at 5:30. This is being sponsored by the City of Seaford. It will be at the Seaford Volunteer Fire Hall. So please see Tracy if you're interested in attending.
And we certainly would like to have a good showing. It's always impressive when a town hosts a meeting and they have a good turnout. So
That's all I have, sir.
well, that didn't take long enough.
It did not.
Councilman Santos, can I lean into you to see if you would do your committee report? Are you
Yes, sir.
okay with that?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My report has been submitted in its entirety. I'll hit a few highlights. The city has met with, attended the pre-construction meeting at the utility buildings, with regional builders. They met with the school district folks and their engineer regarding flooding issues at the running track. It's actually by the soccer field south of the track by the high school. They attended the quarterly golf course meeting with Atkins Management. Charles did say that they would Atkins management was thinking about raising their memberships by about 20% to cover certain costs with irrigation. They worked on getting carpeting prices for the GMB office building as well as painting. They assisted the painting contractor at the GMB building. As far as the IT report goes, they held a planning meeting regarding the downtown security camera project. They worked on the police department VMware migration, and as far as the HR and financing department, they are working on the fiscal year 2021 audit. All other businesses routine. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for jumping in quickly. All right, we're going to go ahead and close our regular meeting. We'll open up our public hearing. I'll turn it over to our building official, Mr. Mike Bailey.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody.
Evening, Mike.
So there's just one item on the public hearing for tonight, and that is for PTV 1125 LLC, located at 23643 Sussex Highway. It's tax map and parcel 331-5.00-63.00. Zoning is C2 Highway Commercial. It's a final site plan review for a proposed 4,070 square foot 7-Eleven convenience store with fuel canopies, gas pumps, car wash, and associated parking. There are three gentlemen here representing the project. From Becker Morgan, I have Jonathan Street and Jonathan Fiskowski, and William Owen. He's representing the property owner and developer on the site. This is the existing site. It's formerly the Dover Pools. The red roof there was the Dover Pools retail store, and the larger building to the left of that is a warehouse. And they're going to start demolition on that either this week or next week. They're ready to go. So they have all their permits for the demolition to start right away. This is the final site plan, pretty much identical to the preliminary that we saw a few months back. I think some minor changes with the entrances and stuff for DelDOT, but pretty much the same. With the fuel islands on the front and the right-hand side, the convenience store right in the middle, a car wash to the left, and then a stormwater management pond on the back there. I did send over some elevations of the buildings here. The main building, the retail store there on the top, the fuel canopies, and the smaller building on the bottom there as the car wash. So everything will kind of match and look real nice out there. So as I said, it's a 4,070 square foot convenience store with associated fuel canopies, both a diesel island and a regular gasoline island. There's 33 paved parking spaces provided, and 21 are the number that's required by code for that size store. And they're doing on-site stormwater management, and they do have all their approvals in from the State Fire Marshal, DelDOT, and the Sussex Conservation District. If there's any questions for myself, for the gentleman here, I'll be glad.
Okay, are there any questions from council? Councilman King?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Hey, Mike, I know early on I had asked a question about, I know this facility is designed for tractor trailers to utilize.
Right.
Did DelDOT ever come back and have discussion around an acceleration or deceleration lane coming out on the 13, or is it just when they come out of that 7-Eleven, is it automatically right on the Route 13?
Go back. It's not shown on this plan. I don't know if they had any comments to y'all in their traffic study. Jonathan could answer that.
Jonathan Street with Becker Morgan Group. Happy to answer that. The state has basically done away with acceleration lanes. The traffic pools, there's a 10-foot shoulder all along that frontage that's currently being repaved, and we'll repave it again once we come through. There's existing right turn lanes in front of the Taco Bell for the first entrance, and then there's a secondary right turn lane into the main center entrance, and then for the trucks to get out, there's a 10, 11-foot shoulder on there as well, on that whole frontage.
Awesome.
So,
Yep, thank you.
yeah,
Appreciate it.
Okay. Any other questions from council? Councilman Henderson?
A couple. It's shown, and just refresh my memory, because I think it was dealt with at the preliminary hearing. The exit that goes on to the access road, and for the life of me, I can't remember the street.
Preservation Drive.
Preservation Drive, okay. It's blocked off.
Yeah, it's going to be blocked off until that road's constructed.
Okay, and there was some talk about getting a durable easement or a permanent easement to Taco Bell's parking lot? Is that,
Yes, they have that.
okay, all right.
Okay, good question. Any other questions from council? Okay, are there any questions from the public? Okay, we're going to go ahead and close our public hearing. We'll reopen our regular meeting.
So this is the findings of facts for tonight's public hearing item. The project is a 7-Eleven final site plan review. The owners are PTV 1125 LLC. Property is located at 23463 Sussex Highway. Has tax map and parcel 331-5.00-63.00. Zoning is C2 highway commercial. They're providing 33 paved parking spaces. It's a 4,070 square foot convenience store with fuel islands and a car wash. They're doing on-site stormwater management, and they do have all their approvals from Sussex Conservation, Office of State Fire Marshal, and DelDOT. And Planning and Zoning did make a favorable recommendation to council at their September 2nd meeting.
Okay, I'll accept the motion.
Mr. Mayor, I make that motion. I make a motion to approve the request of PTV 1125 LLC located at 23463 Sussex Highway, tax map and parcel 331-5.00-63.00 for final site plan approval for a proposed demolition of 2 existing commercial buildings with paid parking and new construction of a 4,070 square foot 7-Eleven store with fuel canopies, gas pumps, car wash, and parking as presented.
Okay, we have a motion from Councilman Holland. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Councilman McCoy seconds. Are there any questions on the motion? If not, I'll do a roll call vote. Councilman Santos,
Yes, based on findings of facts.
Councilman Henderson,
Yes, based on findings of facts.
Councilman Holland,
Yes, based on findings of facts.
Councilman McCoy,
Yes, based on findings of facts.
and Councilman King.
Yes, based on finding of facts.
Okay, it's unanimous.
Thank you.
We're looking forward to having you open. Thank you guys so much for everything.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right,
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, next on our agenda, we'll go to new business number 1. This is a new ordinance. I'm going to invite our city solicitor up, Mr. Griffith. But let me just tee up with this. This is a very specific ordinance, and it's in regards to fetal remains regarding abortions. So currently what happens with remains is they are currently put in as waste, as medical waste, and a medical waste truck comes and picks them up. That does not fit the morals and values of our community. So we're going to present, I'll have our solicitor present a distinguished way, a way to dignify these remains, and I'll let Mr. Griffith walk us through that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, and thank you for having me here tonight. Members of council, thank you for having me, and it's good to see everybody in person. Again, I feel like it's been a while. One of the things we've tried to do is keep abreast of national trends that might interest the city, and a few years ago, actually, the United States Supreme Court held that governments have a legitimate interest in ensuring that fetal remains are disposed of in a dignified way. And since that time, since the Supreme Court said that, there's been a number of governments that have enacted legislation, just like the legislation before you. And as the mayor mentioned, the purpose of the ordinance is really to make sure that the remains of a fetus, the remains from an abortion, are not disposed of in a way that it is treated like medical waste. To ensure that fetal remains are disposed of in a dignified way, we sort of crafted this ordinance based on other governments who have done this. It has been found to be constitutional. It has found not to be a restriction on abortion rights. It is simply a very narrow way of making sure that fetal remains are not treated like medical waste. There are, if I can very briefly summarize what the ordinance provides, it allows the woman, assuming she is 16 or older, to make a decision as to how those remains are going to be disposed of, and there's really 2 options. It is either cremation or interment. She doesn't have to exercise that option. She may leave it to the abortion facility to make that determination for her, but the abortion facility is required to give her that option. And so she can choose either cremation or interment. If she chooses not to make that, the abortion facility is required to give her a form and for her to exercise that option on the form. If she chooses not to do so, the abortion facility will have to make that decision also. But really what it does in the narrowest form is require two forms of dignified disposal of fetal remains, cremation and interment. Like I said, there is not a lot of original language in this ordinance. It is based on the template from other governments who have enacted similar legislation. So that's really the purpose and that's really the content of the ordinance. I'm very happy to entertain any questions or provide a lot more detail if you would like, but it's at least in my view, it's fairly a straightforward following of what other governments have done.
Yep. Remember, this is an ordinance, so this is just a first reading. Nothing is voted on tonight, but do you have any questions for the city solicitor? Councilman King?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I've received several emails in regards to this ordinance. I put a list of questions together, and I actually have a statement from a city resident that I would like to read into record, if everyone's okay with that.
Well, let's start with your questions, and we'll go from there.
Okay, awesome. All right. And before I get into this, I agree wholeheartedly. It's not an easy conversation to have. It's a very sensitive subject, so I'm asking some very specific, kind of tough questions. I'm speaking them with compassion, but as an elected official, I feel that I have that responsibility to read these questions, and also a view other than mine, a biblical view. So I'm going to go through this and kind of read these to you. Is this ordinance or like ordinance currently implemented in any other city in the state of Delaware?
Not to my knowledge.
An ordinance must not be in conflict with any higher law such as state or national law or constitutional provisions. Can the city implement this type of ordinance without the state's approval? In other words, the state implementing this across the entire state?
It's a great question. We are not permitted to enact any ordinance that is in conflict with Delaware law. There is no Delaware law that provides one way or the other with respect to disposition of fetal remains. So if there was a provision in the Delaware Code that said you must permit 20 different ways for disposal of fetal remains, or that said abortion facilities are permitted to dispose of fetal remains like medical waste, then we would have a problem. So we did have to walk a line a little bit between making sure that we ensure the constitutional right to abortion, but also providing for dignified means for disposal of human remains. So that's a long answer. The short answer is this is not in conflict with Delaware law.
Okay, awesome. And this next question kind of talks a little bit around the constitutional aspect of it. So as I understand, currently there are a few states that have implemented this ordinance and were sued. The Supreme Court came back with a split decision issuing without hearing oral argument. The court allowed the states to continue with their ordinance with the express goal of a Supreme Court review. So if the Supreme Court at some point rules on this, if I understand this question correctly, if they rule on it and they find this ordinance unconstitutional, what happens at that point? Does the ordinance change or does the ordinance still stay into effect?
So let me get a little bit of the legislative history and the Supreme Court history that you mentioned. The case that is being referred to was Box versus State of Indiana. Indiana was the first state that had this go to the Supreme Court. I believe it was in 2016. You mentioned it was a divided opinion. I think it was 8-1 upholding the provision. And the Supreme Court, by the vote of 8-1, and the one was Ruth Bader Ginsburg, who is no longer on the court. The determination was that this provision was unrelated to an individual's right to abortion. This has to do with the disposal of fetal remains and does not unfairly impact a woman's right to an abortion. So we're very confident that this would withstand any legal challenge.
Okay, thank you. Is this ordinance written only for abortions or does it include miscarriages and stillbirths?
So there's a definition of abortion that is, frankly, the same definition of abortion that is in the Delaware Code. It would be, in my legal opinion, this definition of abortion does not include miscarriages or stillbirths.
Okay, thank you. is there language in the ordinance or expectations that are written in this ordinance for all abortions? So some of the question is around, like rape or physical ailments or maybe the death of a mother if she had labor. So if they make these decisions, so I guess maybe a legal abortion, maybe with the correct term. So is there any different expectations for situations like this, or is everything in this ordinance solely called out as an abortion, if that makes sense?
It does, and it's another good question. So with respect to the definition of abortion, it does not distinguish between, it does not address how the pregnancy occurred. So it applies to all abortions regardless of how the fetus was conceived.
Okay. And does the ordinance infringe on state and federal religious freedoms concerning burial rights?
It does not.
Okay. Okay. Is there a public forum scheduled for public comment around this ordinance?
No.
All right, that's all the questions I have. I have a brief, very brief.
Let's hold off. Let's get questions answered
Okay.
first before
All
we
right,
read
thank
the
you.
statements.
Thank
Any
you,
other
Mr. Chairman.
questions from Councilman Santos?
Yeah. Are there any abortions currently happening right now into the city limits with the hospital?
At the hospital?
Or not, I would assume that's the only medical facility here that would have.
I don't believe they're performed at our hospital, but they may be performed other places that I'm not aware of.
Okay. All right. That's my only question for right now.
Okay. Other questions from Councilman Henderson?
Who will be the responsible party for enforcement of this ordinance?
So the enforcement provision in the ordinance, and I'll read it into the record because it's very short. A violation of this ordinance shall be enforced either by way of civil infraction or by way of notice and order with associated fines for such violation. Again, that's another provision that was borrowed from prior legislation. That was not something we developed on our own. How I interpret that provision is that a civil infraction, to me, means another citizen can report a violation of this ordinance to the city. It affords the city really broad discretion in how to enforce that. Some of these pieces of legislation classify a violation as a felony, and there are pretty severe criminal penalties for that. This ordinance doesn't do that. This ordinance allows the city very broad discretion to determine what should happen. It could be almost like a FOIA violation. Hey, we have noticed that you're violating this ordinance. Here's an order to stop doing that. Or it can impose civil fines. It can impose, hey, we've noticed you're doing this. We've done it 20 times. We're going to fine you $10 for each time you've done it, something like that. It'll be up to the city, and the city will have quite a bit of discretion on that.
If I could do a follow-up, how would this notice be addressed? Would it be a code enforcement issue?
Yeah, certainly if this ordinance proceeds and we have complaints, whenever we get a complaint, we make an investigation and we follow up. We would obviously work with our city solicitor because this would be the first time we walk down that road. But yeah, we would start with a letter, and we always try to meet during complaints with the property owner or the person causing the problem to see if we can work it out. Did they not understand the ordinance? Do they have any questions? We would take the same approach in this situation.
Yes, sir.
And one final question. If a patient exercises her right to have this done, should the ordinance pass, would the cost of that be transferred to her?
So according to the ordinance, assuming she chooses either cremation or interment, it's, as a matter of first course, up to the facility. Now, the facility is required to maintain a list of locations where this can be done. Mm-hmm. The woman has the option to opt out of that and say, I would like interment, I'm choosing interment, but I'm not through you. not through the abortion facility. In that case, the cost transfers to the woman. If she chooses interment through the abortion facility, the cost is borne by the abortion facility. If she chooses interment elsewhere, the cost is on her.
Thank you.
Councilman Santos, did you have another question?
Yes. So with this ordinance, how I still don't understand exactly how it would be enforced, because the majority of these abortions would be, I believe I read in the CDC, it was about 92.2% of abortions happen during the first 13 weeks of excuse my vocabulary, I think it's gestation. So first 13 weeks, during these first few weeks of pregnancy, normally what's given is a couple pills that work together to that stop the woman from producing progesterone, and also makes the uterus shed itself. So it doesn't really always happen at the Planned Parenthood. They take one pill there, then they go home. They take another pill during the next 48 hours. It might be after 48 hours, which they have. Then they have very heavy. It looks like a very heavy menstrual cycle. So how are they supposed to pick that up or try to fish that out and then try to go to Planned Parenthood? Or
Sure. So these facilities are required to maintain records of any abortion they facilitate. So even when a pill is given, and the ordinance includes within its definition of abortion the use of a drug to help terminate the pregnancy. So any abortion facility who provides a drug for the purpose of terminating a pregnancy has to keep records of that. If there was an audit conducted, for instance, of which abortions have been conducted, within that file of that abortion should be a form also that the woman completed about the disposition of the remains. So that, in my view, to address your hypothetical, the manner in which compliance would be determined would be by looking at the facility's records to see, okay, this patient X was given an abortion drug on January 13th. In this file, there should be a form that identifies how the remains have been disposed of. So in my view, that's how the enforcement would be.
so for that woman, she wouldn't even have the option to do the bury it or cremate it, because it's already, probably it's you can't. It looks like a period's gone. It's this happens during their house, so it's just this ordinance would just make the facility keep a record of that. And
in your instance, there would be no remains.
Mhm.
So this ordinance would apply to any time there are remains, and what to do with those remains.
Okay, so the other 8%, I guess, would be miscarriages or complications. So then the rest of the ordinance wouldn't apply to those people, would it?
As I read the definition of abortion, it would not apply to pregnancies that don't go to that are terminated for reasons other than the choice of the mother.
Okay, so from reading this, I see that this ordinance would hardly affect anybody, because it's either going to be way too early and there's going to be no real need for this, or it's going to be too late and this ordinance doesn't apply to that. Another thing that I wanted to talk about is, I also received phone calls, messages from people from the community. All of them were women, and none of them were in favor of this ordinance. Basically, it comes down to us being a council composed of all men. When this is an issue that's going to affect women, they're the ones that are going to, not 100% of the time, they're the ones that are going to have to face this abortion and make a decision where none of the men that are here are going to have to make that decision. So they did not think that this is a decision that we should even be taking on, because we can all sit here and say that we represent our Christian constituents as Christians, because we're all Christians here, I think, But none of us can come up here and say that we represent the female constituents as females because we're all men, you know? So,
Councilman, I appreciate that, and I can represent to you that that position has been taken with respect, you know, again, we're not treading new ground with this ordinance, and that position's been taken, and it has been determined, and this might be cold comfort to the women you spoke to, but the position that has been taken, at least by the courts, is that this is not, giving dignity to the disposal of fetal remains is not a restriction on a woman's constitutional right to abortion. Like I said, might be cold comfort to them, but at least in the eyes of the law, this is purely related to not treating the fetus like medical waste.
so there's, there right there is another issue that I see, because as Christians, we are raised to believe that life begins at conception, and in a lot of ways that's true, even in a scientific way. You know, the building block of life is one living cell with all its components and compartments that work together, right? So yes, but in a lot of different religions, life does not begin at conception. It begins when they first take a breath. So we are, by passing this ordinance, we are saying that life begins at conception, and we are pushing our religious beliefs onto the rest of the constituents that might not agree with us.
And I guess the only thing I would say to that is that if under somebody's beliefs, what is being disposed of is not a human, I'm not sure why it would matter as much. To me, it would matter more to those who are of a religion who believe that what's being disposed of is a human. To me, I'm not sure I would understand the logic of somebody whose religion says that what is being disposed of is not life. Then it probably, in my view, would not be as important to that person how that gets disposed of. But I'm neither an advocate nor an opponent of this ordinance.
Right.
I'm providing legal counsel, that's all.
Right.
And I certainly appreciate your views, and I think they're all well taken, and the views of your constituents.
Okay, so right now.
Councilman King?
Yep, just a couple follow-up questions. One I missed, but just to kind of piggyback a little bit off of what Councilman Santos referenced. I mean, at no point, being a man, you know, to me, this process as a female and making these decisions would definitely, in my opinion, would prolong the mourning process. So I mean, I hear what he's saying, and I sympathize with that, because this would definitely be making some decisions that, you know, probably wouldn't have to be made before. And in my opinion, and the information, what's being communicated back to me is part of that prolonged mourning period process. But the question that I have is around the actual burial. Let me find that, because I actually missed that one. And then I want to get some clarification, because I asked a little bit about a doctor-ordered abortion, right? So the doctor comes in and says, look, this baby's not healthy, baby's not living, we don't want genes or cells inside of you dying, and the hospital can perform abortions, and they order that abortion. Does that fall under this ordinance? So if a doctor comes in, the baby passed away, the doctor says, look, we need to get this baby out, the cells and genes are just deteriorating, dying inside of the woman, and he orders that removal, does that fall into this ordinance? And that's kind of what I asked a little bit earlier, but I think the response you give Councilman Santos was a little bit different than the response you gave me.
So as I read the definition of abortion, it would not include that scenario.
It would not.
No. So an abortion is with intent other than to increase the probability of a live birth, to preserve the life or health of the child after live birth, or to remove a dead fetus. So if it's to preserve the woman's health, it is.
All right, thank you. And a little bit around that, the funeral procedure or the burial aspect. So the cremation, is that done at a funeral parlor? What happens with the ashes after the cremation? Is there a burial? I mean, is there a plot with a headstone? Is there an urn with ashes? What does that look like?
So section 8.9.14 addresses the manner in which the cremated fetal remains may be disposed of. And there are multiple options. It could be a grave, crypt, or niche. It could be scattering the fetal remains in a dignified manner, or releasing the fetal remains, the cremated fetal remains to the pregnant woman, or any other lawful manner. So there are a lot of options with respect to the cremation option.
And so if the woman doesn't make that decision, then it's left up to the provider to make that decision. So potentially, I mean, you could have a cemetery full of kind of just blank headstones, right? Potentially, if they decide a burial?
I think it would be unlikely for, if it's left to the abortion facility, that the abortion facility would create a cemetery with headstones. My guess is they would either choose the cremation option.
So then what would happen with the ashes after if the mother or family doesn't want the ashes, what happens to the ashes?
So again, it would be one of these options. Whatever the abortion facility wants to do under these options, they can scatter them in a dignified way if they would like.
Now, is that something they could communicate back if this ordinance does pass? Do they communicate back, hey, this is what we're going to do? Or can they just freely to just make a decision on whatever they want? Or they don't have to communicate back saying, hey, this is what we're going to do?
Sure. So if the woman chooses not to exercise her right, there is no obligation by the abortion facility to then communicate back to her which option they've chosen.
Okay. And they don't have to communicate to the city, hey, this is the option. So I guess that's some accountability of holding him, make sure things are disposed of, or things are done correctly instead of disposed as hazardous waste, right? So you kind of, as a measure to hold the facilities accountable, right? Saying, hey, we're going to do this. Because if you don't have some form of measure, and I'm not saying someone would be unethical intentionally, but if there's not some form of measure, how do you know that we're telling you to do this and then we're doing this? How do you hold them accountable to follow up and make sure they're doing what they said they're going to do?
Sure. So I would suggest there's two ways. Number one, there is record-keeping requirements of how those remains are disposed of. And then number two, those records have to be reported to the Office of Vital Statistics.
Awesome.
Okay.
Awesome.
Other questions from council? Again, this is a first reading, do you have another question?
Yes. Yeah, just, this ordinance will only affect Planned Parenthood?
No, sir. This affects any abortions being done in the city of Seaford. It does not target anybody.
Okay. So, but the only facility that performs abortions would be Planned Parenthood, not the hospital, because I know that there's nurses there that I know that tell me that about once a week, there's complications or stuff like that. So, that happens quite regularly. I don't know if the hospital would face any additional cost as well that could be passed on to the patients.
Not based on my conversation with the hospital.
No.
And pregnancies that are terminated because of complications are not subject to this ordinance.
Okay.
And Mr. Mayor, I'd like to read this in the record.
And is that your comments or somebody else's?
This is the comments that was relayed to me.
Do you want to share who they're from?
I don't want to put a name to it, but I would like to read it and put it on the record. It is from a city of Seaford resident. Yes.
That doesn't want their name?
And if you'd like to have that conversation, sidebar conversation in private, but I told them I would not reveal their identity, but I would like to read this for the record.
Okay.
Okay? All right, thank you. So this is James. I would implore you to consider voting against the upcoming fetal remain ordinance that is to be presented at the next council meeting. While I strongly feel it holds no legal legitimacy, it presents the city of Seaford as an unaccepting community. Not only does it create a serviced, undue burden on both our medical facilities and our female citizens, it also infringes on state and federal religious freedoms concerning burial rights. I hope you will consider my thoughts on this and understand by allowing this to be pushed forward, the governing body for the city of Seaford is speaking for the entire city and saying that we are not a city of acceptance or one that provides rights for women.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Any other questions or comments for the city solicitor?
Yes, one last question for the attorney. Could you, on the last page of the ordinance, 8.9.20, could you explain why that clause is there, fetal remains as part of the criminal investigation, how that might come up?
Sure. This is a provision that's common in a lot of ordinances, and it's meant to protect when there are requirements in other portions of the ordinance to have record keeping and to do certain things. But that all goes out the window sometimes when you get a subpoena from the Attorney General's office and you have to comply with that subpoena. What this provision is really sort of meant to do is exonerate the abortion facility, exonerate the woman if you're complying with a legal obligation as part of a criminal investigation or something like that. If you're obligated by law to provide information or engage in some conduct that would otherwise be prohibited by other provisions in this ordinance, you are exempt from those other provisions. You can comply with that subpoena. You can participate in that investigation.
Okay.
All right. Sounds good. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions from council?
Thank you.
Sure.
Okay, again, this is a first reading. This is a challenging topic, but it comes down to just where you are with your beliefs in regards to fetal remains and handle them with dignity.
Mr. Mayor, may I be excused? I don't think I have any other business tonight.
Yes, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, we'll go to new business number 2, and this is the comprehensive plan.
Yes, sir. So we have this evening in your package ordinance 2021-06 to adopt the 2021 City of Seaford Comprehensive Plan. And this, if the ordinance is adopted this evening, the plan would become effective upon receipt of the certification letter from the governor. So he would still have to sign that into law. We did receive a letter from the State Planning Office that did accept all of our changes that resulted from our prior meetings with council and our prior public hearing. So we are at the final stages of the comprehensive plan, and if there are any questions, certainly I can try to field them, try to answer them.
Okay, are there any questions in regards to the comprehensive plan? If not, I'll accept the motion.
Mr. Mayor, I'll make the motion to approve ordinance 2021-06 to adopt the 2021 City of Seaford Comprehensive Plan to become effective upon receipt of the certification letter from the governor as presented.
Okay, we have a motion from Councilman McCoy. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Councilman Santos, second. Are there any questions on the motion? If not, I'll do a roll call vote. Councilman McCoy?
Aye.
Councilman Holland?
Aye.
Councilman Henderson?
Aye.
Councilman Santos?
Aye.
Councilman King?
Aye.
Okay, it's unanimous, so it passes. Thank you so much. That's taken a lot of work, so appreciate the city pushing hard on that. All right, next we have a presentation on the pool operations, and we're inviting up Ms. Torbert and gang and team. Some reluctant followers.
TNT.
There we go.
Yes, good evening.
Good evening.
I'm here tonight joined with Chanel Evans and Nancy Sturgeon, members of the Seaford Community Board. Our other members could not be here this evening due to other obligations. Oh. We are pleased to say that we were able to open this season after being closed last season due to COVID. And we wanted just to come tonight to give just a little brief presentation about how our season went and just give you some figures. So this season, we had 432 members that joined. I think that's pretty average, what we typically have. We were able to employ 9 lifeguards, 1 pool manager, and 1 swim team coach. And we had 1 assistant swim team coach that volunteered her time. As you all are aware, and it's also included in your board pack, we did enter into a cost share agreement with the city. This was year 2 of the agreement. Last year was year 1. We didn't open, so based off the agreement, after $50,000, it's a 60%, 60-40 split, 60% to the city, 40% for the pool. Our treasurer reported that approximately $7,000 we will be giving back to you guys based off of that cost share agreement. So based on that figures, you can see that we did have a successful season.
Good job.
Do you have that with you?
I do not. I'm not the treasurer. So we did want to point out some highlights of our season. We were able to partnership with Chick-fil-A this season. They donated, and we did some things in return. We negotiated some stuff, and it was really good. We did purchase some new lounge chairs and tables. Our members are always loving the new stuff around the pool. We did partner with SSA for a swim team this year. We noticed the numbers were down for swim teams for both, so we came together, and they practiced together one time a week, and then they did the meets together. The Seaford Community Swim Center did host all the meets that were home. And we also, this year, we tried it for the first time ever. We remained open on the weekends from 12 to 5 on Saturdays and Sundays during the month of September. It was good. The pool was cold, the water, but we did find, I think, that Sundays were more popular than Saturdays as far as people that came out, but we did have good weather, so that also helped. And we were able to have some successful fundraisers. We had a bingo around the pool. We cooked on the grill some nights. We had a movie night, and we had some night swims. And the swim team also did some fundraisers. They did a crab raffle, they raffled off a Yeti cooler, and they also had a fun night swim. We did want to just put out in front of you that we do know of some needs for the upcoming season. Pumps, which Charles and I did look at the budget, and we did see that that is included in the budget. And a flow meter for the baby pool. We were having a hard time this year keeping the chloration and the pH level in the baby pool at a good level, and it was Steve Cannon advised us that that does need to be replaced. Let's see. And we thank you for your support and partnershiping with us, and we look forward to many more summers together. And if any of you know any people that would love to volunteer, we are always looking for members for our board and members of our pool. Thank you.
I think we would serve, but it'd be a conflict, right? Any questions from the council? Listen, that pool, as you all remember the history, it was a center place in our town, and then it went down, and it's been built back up, and I live relatively close, and to hear the kids screaming and hollering and having a good time over there, it just brings back great memories of families having fun in the pool in the summer. So appreciate, and I know it's a ton of hard work, so appreciate your work on keeping it going. Great job.
Thank you for all your efforts.
Good job, appreciate it.
You guys
Thank
have
you.
anything you wanted to add?
Thank you.
Thank you guys for staying. All right, next we have first reading of the municipal code on electric rules and regulations. Mr. Bennett is going to walk us through it.
Good evening, Mayor and Council, City
Good
Manager.
evening.
Good evening.
In front of you have proposals to change the rules and regulations, Chapter 6, Article 2, concerning multifamily residences. Currently, no one on our distribution system pays for an electric meter, but on all commercial and multifamily residences pay for their water meters. These multifamily residences require a large number of meters, and a meter for each unit runs from $105.30 to $125.72, depending on the voltage. And that's it, the last time I ordered meters, both of them within the last year. An example of some of these, residents at River Place Building 3 is 36 units. Their meters are $125.72 each. So that's a cost of $4,525.92 at today's current cost. Melanie's Ridge Phase 1 has 56 meters at $105.30 each for a cost of $5,896.80 for their meters. And that's just for the meters for the units, not the house meters for the streetlights and that kind of thing. If you adopt this change, it would be, the proposal would be effective January 1st, 2022. That will grandfather in the 4 developments that have their plans approved and have paid their escrow money for distribution extension. That's Muirfield 2 Phase 1, Melanie's Ridge Phase 1, Bel Air multifamily development, and residents at River Place Building 3. So if you combine those 4 approved already, that's a cost of $22,637.52 in meters. single-family residence, your single-family house would not be charged for for their electric meter. This is just multifamily, duplexes, townhouses, and apartment buildings.
Okay. All right, any questions for Director Bennett?
I have just
Councilman King?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Bennett, I love the idea. The only thing, the question I have is if a potential investor comes in building something big, as you alluded to, do you think some of that thing would be, why don't you just waive this fee to put all these meters in? If we adapt this and we vote yes on this, do you foresee someone coming and saying, hey, well, I'm putting this investment into your community and I don't, can we waive this fee?
That can still happen. It would go through the Economic Development Committee. That would be, when I do my proposal, my estimate for distribution extension, I would include, I'll use Bel Air, I would include the 77 meters in there. And then they can bring that to the Economic Development Committee and ask for some type of waiver and forgiveness. So not that it can't happen in the future. The other thing it does, that would give you a better track on what incentives and forgiveness you're giving developers.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Director Bennett? Councilman Henderson?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Bill, what was the reasoning behind not including that cost as part of your development cost to begin with? Because you charge for transformers, wire, and everything else up to the pan.
We don't charge for we do not charge for the transformers, and it's currently in our rules and regulations that the city supplies the meter.
Okay.
And not the developer.
So as a part of development, the transformer cost is not included?
No.
Correct.
They paid the wiring, everything. Right now, they pay basically everything but the transformer and the meters.
Councilman Santos?
Yes, this would be only apply to new developers, right? If there's a quadplex or a duplex right now that has a meter that has to be replaced for whatever reason, they wouldn't have to pay for that? No. Okay.
Any other questions? All right, this is a first reading, first pass. You'll be back
2
next
weeks.
meeting. Thank you, Mr. Bennett.
You're
Appreciate
welcome.
all
Thank
you
you.
do. All right, down to new business number 6. We're going to invite up Ms. Hickey to walk through the ORPT grant.
Good evening.
Good evening.
So I'm here to ask for approval of a resolution for 2 outdoor recreation and parks and trails grant through the state of Delaware for 2 different, it's the same grant but for 2 separate projects. We've applied for this grant for the last 3 years. The first thing that you'll see up on the screen is the first project, which is Nutter Park. The total cost for this project is estimated to be $43,000, and this is typically a 50% matching grant. You can see in the blue kind of square rectangular area, that's where we would like the proposed new playground structure. What is not shown in the picture is also for additional security lighting. It's a pretty dark area that we would like to keep lit to keep people away outside of or after hours after the park closes. The second project that we would like to apply for is the boardwalk replacement at Riverwalk. And so what this would end up being is we just got the brand new boardwalk, beautiful boardwalk at the Oyster House Park, and we would like to kind of extend that and replace the decking boards to match what is currently at Oyster House Park, and that's estimated $20,000 also with a 50% match. The one thing that is a little bit different this year, we are lucky to be qualified for or eligible for up to a 75% match through the state. They've just made some adjustments and we've become eligible. So for Nutter Park, that would be up to $32,250, and then for Riverwalk, it's up to $15,000. And both projects have been approved and are in the current FY22 budget.
Okay, are there any questions for Ms. Hickey in regards to this grant opportunity? Councilman King?
Katie, can we talk a little bit about why Nutter Park was chosen instead of maybe like a Jay's Nest? I mean, you get a lot of complaints about playground equipment and conditions. So can you talk a little bit about why you picked this park versus some of the other parks in the city?
Absolutely. So Nutter Park also falls under not a different jurisdiction. There was a survey done. Forgive me, it's called the SCORP survey, and I cannot remember what that acronym stands for, but it's essentially a statewide survey. And this area, there's a lot of children that are in this area that it's a more walkable distance to a playground, so it provides more accessibility. As I'm not saying that the Jay's Nest is not in a central location, but just in comparison to them walking from the Jay's Nest in those surrounding communities to Nutter Park, this is a much closer distance. In my personal opinion, I would like to focus on Nutter Park because I would like to make it more attractive to families. I want to make it more family friendly so that it feels more safe, so that less crime and other bad things happen. People are kind of deterred from that. Not to say that it wouldn't happen elsewhere, but if we could keep it out of the parks so that our parks are safe, that's kind of why my focus is. We just got a new swing set a couple years ago, actually using this grant, so I would kind of like to expand on that, just to provide another option for those children.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Appreciate that.
Councilman McCord?
Just a brief comment. I've had several residents comment to me that they would like to have more things to do out in Nutter Park. So I think if approved, this would be a very welcome addition.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Certainly the people of East Seaford will appreciate this. Any other questions? Councilman Henderson?
Thank you. How does this, how do your aspirations compare to the bid that was rejected a couple years ago? You had presented something and the bid came in so absorbent that it wasn't done. Is it similar to that, or?
I believe that was the resurfacing of the
basketball courts.
Yeah.
Yes.
And what we did there, if I remember, Superintendent Hickey will help me, we, instead of repaving the basketball court, we resurfaced it. We got with our Director of Public Works. There was another product we used, and then your forces actually repainted it after we did the seal coating of the surface. Do I remember that correctly?
Yes.
Yeah, I thought there was some other play equipment,
Yeah.
another project that didn't get done because of expense or something.
We did, there was, I think the project, I'm trying to remember, I think this project did come in way over budget. So even if we were eligible for the match, we didn't have it in our current budget to even, because it's a reimbursement grant. So when it comes in exponentially high, it was just too much for us to incur. So Burley gave us this option. It was way more affordable. And then our guys were able to paint the lines, which it definitely enhanced both of the courts. It didn't do exactly what we wanted, but it certainly extended its life.
Councilman Santos?
Yes. Besides these two projects, what other projects do you have? I mean, what would be the third one if, let's say, one of these wasn't accepted? I mean,
I would certainly, I mean, this is definitely in the forefront, but there are a couple projects. There's lighting of the pickleball courts. There is restoration of the Jay's Nest, which is one of our most popular and largest playgrounds. Just a few other things, maybe adding more amenities, sidewalks, something for definitely further discussion. But this, I think, like I said, we did this project for the swing set, which is highlighted in yellow, a couple years ago, and it went over really well. So I think I just saw this as kind of a priority more over than the other projects.
I like this. I was wondering more so about the boardwalk. How much life would you say is left on that boardwalk, or is it at the end of its life, or are we doing this to just make it match and it look better aesthetically?
It is certainly at the end of its life. What's not shown
Okay.
here, there are a couple additional photos that I could probably send out via email if anybody would like it, of us replacing several boards just earlier this year. I'd say it definitely has reached the end of its life. It's not that it's become super hazardous, because we wouldn't want that, but we want to prevent that from happening. So if we could get that replaced, that will certainly help us out.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Any other questions for Councilman Henderson?
So where is the lighting and the tree trimming for Nutter Park? Where is that in the pecking order?
So we haven't decided of a certain area, but, sorry, I'll try to speak loud. Essentially, this area, kind of along here, so it's close to the street. That way, I think we budgeted 3 lights that would be installed by the electric department. Just, I'd say around this area, this back corner especially is, and I'll just come back here so I'm at the microphone. So that area is especially very dark after hours and evening hours. So we would really like that area to be more lighted throughout the evening, just to kind of keep that away, keep people from, parking and such.
So is that a budgeted item?
Yes,
For this year?
both projects are budgeted.
Okay, any other questions from council? If not, I'll accept a motion.
Mr. Mayor, I make that motion to approve the Outdoor Recreation, Parks and Trails, ORPT, grant resolutions for Nutter Park, playground structure and security lighting. Total cost $43,000, matches up to $32,250, and Riverwalk, Boardwalk decking, replacement total cost $20,000, match up to $15,000, as presented.
Okay, we have a motion from Councilman Holland. Is there a second?
Councilman King, I'll second that
Councilman
motion.
King seconds. Are there any questions on the motion? All right, we'll do a roll call vote. Councilman Holland?
Aye.
Councilman McCoy?
Aye.
Councilman King?
Aye.
Councilman Santos?
Aye.
Councilman Henderson?
Aye.
Okay, it's unanimous. Thanks very much, Ms. Hickey. Appreciate it. All right, is there any old business?
No, sir, there is not.
All right, then we'll go to committee reports. We'll go right to Councilman Henderson, Police and Fire.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We have a report from Chief John Wilson of the Seaford Volunteer Fire Department. I'll summarize it. Both reports for both departments are lengthy and detailed, but I'll be brief. Out of a total of 682 fire calls to date as of 9/27, and there were 70 calls so far this month in September. Under EMS calls, there are 2,775 calls to date as of yesterday, and 264 calls for the month of September. That is a total of 3,457 total calls for the department, for an average of 12.8 calls per day. There were several significant calls, 2 motor vehicle crashes and 1 working structure fire, which was on Seaford Road, and they assisted Blades Volunteer Fire Company. Under apparatus, the old B87 is out of service to change over to the new ambulance, which was displayed here tonight. The insurance DMV registration have been completed, and we're awaiting the state ambulance certification. And late breaking news, there was a question asked outside previously. The $250,000 cost for the ambulance was funded by Sussex County. So thank your local councilman. There are advertisements out for EMT firefighter positions and a captain position. And you can see a long list of items for other news and events. Of particular note, there was the Delaware State Volunteer Firefighters Conference was held on September 15th, 16th, and 17th. And among the awards, past Chief Michael Vincent received his 50-year service for Delaware Fire Service recognition. Deputy Chief Matt Reed, pardon me, received the Sussex County Young Leadership Award. And deceased members of the Seaford Volunteer Fire Department and the auxiliary were paid tribute to from 2020 and 2021. They were Carlton Spuck Bennett, Wayne Ellingsworth, William Pinky Higgins, Alice Marie B.B. Miller, Mary Swift, Julian Joe Toon, and Marion Swift Tyndall. They were all honored during that ceremony. And you can see some other activities from the fire department there. Under Police Chief Marshall Kraft's report, you can see the columns with year-to-date crimes, 2021 total year-to-date crimes reported was 4,518. Pardon me. There were 206 criminal complaints, and you can see the distribution there. There's an 85% clearance rate. Under drug crimes, there were 31 total drug crimes with 28 adult arrests, 1 pending active, and 2 prosecution declined. Under traffic, there are 235 traffic contacts, resulting in 78 citations and 17 warnings. 23 crashes with 2 injury crashes, 13 non-injury crashes, and 8 reportable crashes. You'll see a list of, by no means all the events, but the significant events that the chief wanted you to know about, including some weapons and drugs seized, getting some of those illicit materials off the street. You'll see activities of the administration, along with different events that have been happening. There's on the 17th of September, Operation Clear Track was spearheaded or led by Staff Sergeant Valerie Horn. And the chief attended Saturday Night Live, as well as the mayor and myself and Councilman Holland. It was a great event. If I missed anybody, I didn't see you. I was sitting up front. You got to get there early to get a seat in the back.
Flash was on.
Under training, the Child First interviewing protocol class was attended by Detective James, and the Fall Firearms Day and Night Shoot for requalification was held for all officers, and that concludes my report.
Thank you very much.
Oh, if I might.
Yes, sir.
One
Yes, sir.
thing. I would like to take some time to thank the participation of the Seaford Volunteer Fire Department in the funeral proceedings for David Sapp, a longtime Greenwood volunteer firefighter and husband of Janine. It was a very poignant and heartfelt service. Thank you.
Thank you. When is the police night out? Is that coming up before our next meeting?
It is coming up. It's October 7th.
Yes, we need to make mention of that. That starts at 5 o'clock out at the police department and the Boys and Girls Club,
I'm
right?
not sure, I may have missed it, but it's,
I was trying to, We want to make sure the public
It wasn't
knows about that.
listed. So, thank you for reminding us.
You're quite welcome. All right, next we'll go to Codes, Parks, and Rec. Councilman Holland.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We start with Parks and Recs. Out of this year, they completed 65 work orders for the season. You prep fields and parks for special events and fall sports leagues. Michaelina received her CDL license, whose thanks to Public Works and Electric Department for assisting with the training. And Parks and Rec is holding a small group of students from Seaford High School doing various service learning projects for a 7-week period. And they held a third week of youth flag and youth soccer. Team is keeping up with posting team standings on social media. And Katie met with landscaping contractor to review weekly/monthly reports. And all the work is routine. And we'll switch to code department. We are framing up first 2 buildings at Mountains Ridge are nearly complete. Loading dock construction is done at East Park Business Center. Interior work is underway at Amazon. And all the work is routine. That concludes my report, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much. Next, go to Electric. Councilman McCoy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Had a few highlights here. Since the last report, Dylan Calloway has completed groundman training at VMDAEC training. Greg Brook has completed the final week of lineman training at VMDAEC. Nick Smart, Nick M., I'm drawing a blank on his last name at the moment. Moore, thank you. Nick
Sorry.
Moore and Tyler went to DMEC Tool and Truck Expo. Sorry, Nick. Dylan practiced for his CDL driving test. In regards to our director, had his standard director's meeting, staff meeting, and met with general contractor at Bel Air. I went to DMEC Tool and Truck Expo as well. Over the next few weeks, we're going to continue working at Wawa to run the loop feed to the front pole line, continue working in Bel Air multifamily, and add a second transformer at Eastern Shore Metals. That is a few highlights of the report have been submitted in its entirety.
Thank you very much. Next, we'll go to Public Works, Wastewater Treatment. Councilman King.
All right, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I will start with the Public Works Department. My report has been submitted in its entirety. I'm just going to hit some of the high-value items they are currently working on and have worked on. They've been doing some road work out at East Ivy, replacing some of the old patches, equipment maintenance as we're transitioning from one season to the next. The guys have been extremely busy, putting a lot of resources on limbs and leaf cleanup. They have still have one open position. Bids are coming in, as we talked about tonight, for the street paving. We'll jump over to the wastewater treatment facility. All is going well. Receiving all flow from Bridgeville and Greenwood. Plant performance remains good, and no major equipment maintenance needed. Some of the activities that will be happening over the next 2 weeks. Councilman Henderson will be excited. They're going to replace some fire hydrants on Market Street prior to the repaving. They're going to crack some seals on Front Street. They're going to do some more patchwork on Shipley and South Market for Del Dot, and just continue to do all routine tasks. Wastewater treatment facility, they're going to keep the plant up and running with no violations, and then perform maintenance as needed. And with that, Mr. Mayor, that concludes my report.
Thank you very much. I do want to thank the city for all their hard work. We have literally millions of dollars pouring into our city all over the place in construction. That's all reaping the benefit of work done 6 months to 3, 4, 5 years ago. It's really paying off, and I want to thank all of our employees for really making it happen. So with that, I will accept a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
A motion from Councilman McCoy. Do we have a second?
I'll second that motion.
Councilman King seconds. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, it's unanimous. Thank you. Good night.